This week, I think, is a really critical week, and for sure next week, because then you would have had some idea of what happens when you go back to school. So the next couple of weeks is 2 weeks of careful vigilance.
Daily numbers of new COVID cases in Canada are on a steady upward trend as schools reopen and students return to class. Epidemiologists say it's not the start of a dreaded second wave, but could become one if we're not careful.
The average daily case counts has been increasing in recent days. This is concerning. And I want to underscore that when cases occur, including in schools, it is a reflection on what's happening in the community.
We have a few things going on simultaneously. We have this rise in numbers, we have the colder weather, we have the cold and flu season starting, and we have schools opening up. There's a lot going on.
Dr. Raywat Deonandan is an epidemiologist and says rising case numbers aren't a great sign, but not the explosive rise that would come in a second wave. Students returning to school represent another risk factor, but Deonandan says there isn't much precedent for safely reopening schools during a pandemic.
Harvard has some metrics for establishing whether a school opening is safe, and these include having an incidence rate of no more than 25 cases per 100,000 population. And right now across Canada, we're well below that threshold. So if we were to meet or exceed that threshold, I think then that's time for worry. That's time when we have to consider whether our growth rate is explosive or not.
Deonandan says there are 4 key goals during school reopening. Stop COVID in the community, stop community cases from getting into schools, stop in-school spread, and finally, stopping infected schools from reinfecting the community. Students in America began to return in August, and while the two nations have approached the pandemic differently, Deonandan says there's still much Canada can learn.
It has not been particularly strong across the board, and they have failed at every level of that opening process. So we can learn a lot, especially that first one. Keep it out of the community, that way it cannot get into the schools.
Now, Deonandan says that while we might see news about school infections soon, there will be a lag of about 2 weeks before we start to see good data models about the first bit of September. That's related to the amount of time someone can be infectious without showing symptoms. And he adds that early September data may show spikes related to the Labor Day long weekend rather than in-school infections. In Ottawa, Xiaoli Li, City News.